Okay, let's dive right in. Have you ever dreamed of buying your own business? I mean, it's a powerful way to build wealth, to really take charge of your own destiny. But here's the thing, there's a pretty big catch. Today we're going to break down an expert's guide on how to actually do it successfully and join a very, very exclusive club.
So we have to start with a number that's, well, it's a bit of a reality check. This comes from an expert business broker, Michael Shea, who sold over 260 businesses. Get this, a staggering 90% of people who start looking into buying a business, they never actually do it. They start the journey, but they just never get to the finish line.
And that leads us to the single most important question, right? What separates the people who succeed from everyone else? How do you become part of that successful 10%? Well, it turns out it's not about getting lucky. It's all about following a proven process.
This right here is what we call the buyer's dilemma. The path is just littered with traps, but our guide, he's basically cracked the code. So let's walk through his process for seriously boosting your odds of success.
It really all starts with your mindset. Shea says you need to be cautious. Before you even think about looking at a single listing, you've got to be all in, ready to be the one calling the shots. Because as you're about to see, leadership, that is the #1 skill in this whole game.
So it begins with understanding your role. And it might not be what you think. You're not just a player in this game, you're the head coach. You're the one in charge, responsible for the final score.
And what does that mean? It means you are leading a team of paid professionals, your attorney, your CPA, your broker. You know, one of the biggest mistakes first-time buyers make is they just kind of hand the reins over to one of these experts. But you have to remember, the outcome is your responsibility, nobody else's.
Now, to lead that team, you have to define their lanes. It's super important. Your attorney's job is the legal stuff. Your CPA's job is to verify the numbers. And your broker's job is to manage the deal itself. Your most critical task here is making sure nobody drifts out of their lane. You definitely don't want your CPA giving you opinions on price or your lawyer trying to give you business advice.
All right, and here we are. This is probably the most critical, most counterintuitive piece of advice in this entire process. Honestly, this is the secret sauce that separates the 10% from the 90%. So what's that one huge mistake? It's simple. They start in the wrong place. The 90% of people who fail, they all do the exact same thing. They hop on the internet, they go to the business for sale websites, and they just start searching. It feels like you're making progress, but it's actually the main reason people fail.
So here it is, the path to success, laid out plain and simple. The wrong way is to search first. The right way involves 2 steps that have to, and I mean have to, happen before you even look at a single business: evaluation and education.
Evaluation. This is all about turning the microscope on yourself. It's a really deep session with your broker to get clear on your finances, your skills, what you need from a lifestyle perspective, and what your real goals are. This process creates the filter that's going to make your search focused and incredibly effective later on.
And then there's education. This is where you become a student of the game. You've got to learn the whole process, understand how businesses are actually valued, and research the market. Your broker's role here kind of shifts. They're not just an advisor, they're your teacher, guiding you so you can make decisions with confidence, not just blind trust.
So, only after you've built that solid foundation from evaluation and education, only then are you really ready to start searching. And now, instead of just wandering around online, you can search with a real purpose.
And the first pro tip for the search is a bit of a shocker. Ignore the asking prices. Seriously. Why? Because the market decides the price, not the person selling the business. For example, the average business in Florida might be listed for 3 times its cash flow, but it actually sells for closer to 1.89 times cash flow. Big difference. So instead of chasing some arbitrary price or being stuck on a specific zip code, smart buyers focus on what's really going to make them successful. They chase the cash flow, they look for a business that's a great match for their own unique skills, and they're already thinking about how they're going to exit the business someday, right from day one.
Oh, and if you need proof that you should keep an open mind, check this out. A full 80% of buyers end up buying a business in a completely different industry than the one they thought they wanted. 80%. So you got to embrace the surprise because your perfect business might be in a field you've never, ever considered. All right, so your targeted search has led you to the right business. Now you're entering the final and maybe most critical stages of the deal. This is where all that preparation really pays off, and you have to be precise.
So the end game, it follows a pretty clear timeline. It starts with a contingent offer, which basically unlocks a set amount of time for you to do your due diligence and verify everything. If it all checks out, you move on to closing, and then, super important, the transition period with the seller.
Now let's talk about due diligence, because this is a big one. It has one purpose and one purpose only: to verify that what the seller told you is actually true. It is not a chance to try and renegotiate the price. That is a really common mistake, and it can kill a perfectly good deal in a heartbeat.
And throughout this whole final phase, you have to act with urgency. The number one rule in any transaction, you've got to remember this, is time kills deals. Momentum is your absolute best friend, so you always have to keep the ball moving forward.
This is where your broker really earns their keep. They basically become the project manager, or as Shea calls it, the bird dog. They're quarterbacking the whole closing process, handling all the communication, coordinating the professionals, making sure all the accounts get transferred, just making sure nothing falls through the cracks.
And just remember, crossing that finish line, signing the papers, that's not the end. Real success depends on a smooth handover. That training and transition period you get from the seller is absolutely vital for making sure you can step in and run the business well from your very first day.
And that brings us right back to where we started, doesn't it? This entire process is about one thing: leadership. From hiring your team in the beginning to running the business long after you close, you and you alone are in control. You have to take charge.
Look, by following this roadmap, evaluate first, then educate, and then search, you can avoid all the traps that catch 90% of people who try this. You now have the path to join that successful 10%. So the only question left is, are you ready?